and not having done any science, but fascinated by this apparent science, geology, but I didn't have chemistry or biology or physics. And so in I plunged with all the engineers and everything, and I would write stories about the experiments, because
Right.
I didn't have a background in science. But actually, looking back on it, I think it was, if I could even say it was maybe even a positive, because it allowed me to nurture and bring forward the imagination that we're all born with, but quite often gets sort of squashed in conventional education. And I had to use it because it was almost all I had. If you think geology is a bit like joining the dots, except it's in 3 dimensions. You get a number of pieces of what we call outcrop rocks, and then we use our imagination and some tools like seismic or various forms of geophysics and join the dots under the earth to portray the architecture. But nobody really knows. So imagination and bringing that innate.
And gut instinct, I guess, would be another thing then in that sort of an environment.
Tied together, very much so. Yep. So,
and also, obviously, and as the years have progressed, I'm sure you start to build the skills to know that those 3 outcrops mean that there might be something in the middle, I guess.
Yeah, and something in the middle could be a gold deposit, if that's what you're thinking about. And of course, what I was looking for in Belize was oil and gas. And, just to jump to something exciting, we had 500,000 acres. And we had to choose the location of one well, which is worse than finding a needle in a haystack. I mean, everybody.
And let me jump in as well, because you also, lots of companies had tried to find oil there, hadn't they? Yep. I think when we were interviewing me before, you said there were 50 dry wells that had been put down by all the big companies before you got there and chose your 500 square miles or whatever it was.
Yes, the 50 dry holes had been drilled by most of the big boys, the big oil companies, ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, etc. Shell had been in, all the big ones had been in and declared the area basically a no-go area, no oil.
I just love this so much. I love it that you didn't listen to them in the first place and that you kind of showed them in the second place.
Well, I must say the retired president of Shell Pecton, Marlon Downey, even though he told me, to be careful of my reputation, keeping going on about Belize, he was one of the first to congratulate me and say, Susan, your perseverance, your vision, because he realized there was something extra, and that extraness, that understanding of the mind that he alluded to actually there was what all came together to allow us to transcend all the difficulties. And because we only had enough money for maybe a well and a half. And
I love this story. and so you got. Yeah.
Well, in essence, what really happened was because normally in the oil business, when you're going to drill what's called a wildcat,
right,
maybe another oil company would come in with you. But we tried about 40 of them. None of them would come in. They basically all had heard the story. There's no oil. So
I bet they're kicking themselves now.
It's wonderful because I must say they all have been man enough to congratulate us.
Oh, that's good. Well, I mean, and really, it's an amazing accomplishment. So they bloody well should have.
I think, now, I was going to say, I think what actually is in this day and age, and I mean, especially in the reflection that's occurring in many people's minds during this shut-in time, what we've become famous for is, yes, discovery of the first oil against all odds, but because of the holistic model, the model which is the empowerment of the people of Belize and the balance and harmony with the environment, we have become a beacon for that around the world. And I think that is something that I'm probably even more proud of.
Okay, now, Susan, I think that when I was reading your bio, you did the Educo course before you found the oil. Is that right?
Very definitely. In fact, let me just take a few steps back to answer your question accurately. Mike Usher and I, now Mike is a very tall Belizean man, and I met him about 35 years ago. But I had already fallen in love with Belize and Belizean people. I was introduced to him in Denver because people already heard me saying about this amazing country with the beautiful people. And into my life walked Mike Usher, who had the same desire. And we became sort of soulmates. He had the same desire to make a difference. And both of us were in different ends of the oil business. And we thought,
right. So hang on. Well, what did Mike do then? If you were the geologist, what was his role?
Well, he was a surveyor with CGG, which is a big geophysical company.
Right.
And so it was more that we both were thinking if oil could be found and actually carried out with and for the people, it could make a real difference in the country positively instead of negatively, which is quite often what happens around the world. There's a sort of a negative aura around oil, but it's not the oil's fault. It's the handling of it.
Yeah, exactly. And the people that run it. So I'm fascinated to hear what you're actually doing in Belize to make a difference. But let you keep telling me that story first. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, because Mike and I searched for 15 years. We even caused a well to be drilled in offshore Belize. And actually, I even thank God right now we didn't hit, because it's so important to have partners with total alignment.
Absolutely. And that's the same for any woman out there. You know, if you're going to have a partner, they've got to be on the same journey as you.
Whether it be romantic or business or friendship, it's really important to be to back each other, to believe in each other, and to hang around with the right group. And I'd say that's a takeaway in itself. Now, I then, parallel to Mike and I shooting seismic drilling wells and with no avail, I had a sort of an invention. It was called the International Pavilion. And it made me actually quite well known in the oil and gas arena. Because
what was the International Pavilion then?
The International Pavilion was an idea which I had to invite the energy world, the oil and gas world, to come and exhibit all their petroleum potential at the AAPG convention. Now, every year, because at that stage, this was 25 years ago now, that wasn't happening. And yet it seemed so obvious. So,
well, I'm such a huge fan of collaboration, I have to say, with everyone. I very rarely see competitors. I see potential collaborators or people to support. But I would have thought in that industry, everyone is competing with each other. So how did you even do it, and what made you think of it?
Because I was traveling as a young geologist. I was traveling to various parts, whether it be Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, Belize, and I could see all this potential. I would come back to Denver, and the price of oil was so low, my geology pals were bartenders. There was no work. And I thought,
wow,
well, this is nutty. How do I get them all together? And as life would have it, and I think that's another key phrase, as life would have it, the American Association of Petroleum Geologists approached me. Actually, it was the head of the convention, Robbie Grease, and said, would you be the head of international in this next year's convention? And I said, well, what does it do? And they said, we've never had one before. You make it up. And I went,
perfect.
And I saw that sort of, light bulb moment, that I'd been given this opportunity, that I'd had this sort of, let's say, it's a sort of bit like an invention on, but here was the gateway for action. Because many people have ideas, but if you don't take action, they languish.
Absolutely. And then bringing everyone together, of course, also generates ideas and also lets people bounce off each other, which is so much more powerful than trying to do anything on your own.
It was amazing. And here's another thing for all the ladies listening. the same time as all the distinguished guests arrived from 52 countries around the world, their ministers of energy, their head of negotiation, it was the Secretary of Commerce from the United States, they all arrived in Denver under this heading of the International Pavilion. The same week, the request for the adoption of a baby came in.